my mother asked me when I was very young. She said, one thing to think about in life is what would you do if you had $1 million? And that's just the number that people say when they talk about not having to worry about money. At least that's what I thought when I was like a preteen. And I'm like, oh, I would start a foundation, not even understanding what that is, but knowing that I wanted to do something probably in the arts. I wanted to do an arts foundation. But the idea of launching something that could help some kind of community with some issue was something that I just was really interested in doing, even though, I kind of put that thought to the side when I was pursuing my degree and my life after my degree, never thinking that that situation would even happen. But then it did. So it's like, okay, I did think about this. And there is this community that I really love, this financial content creation community. So I really wanted to tie all of those things together as much as I could and think about how I could give back. That is when I took this sort of idea from the Plutus Awards and turned that into a mission-focused idea. So what I want to do is give back to this community in return for everything that it has brought to me. I wasn't sure exactly what that meant, but I knew that I wanted to do that.
Welcome to another episode of the Plutus Awards Podcast. Our community is filled with hundreds of stories from creators and entrepreneurs just like you. And through this show, we share these stories of challenges and successes from bloggers to podcasters, from writers, speakers, and more. Today's guest is Harlan Landes, founder of the Plutus Foundation, Plutus Awards, and Plutus Voices events. We talk about how he got started in personal finance, the evolution of his financial brand, and thoughtfully building out an online space that empowers and uplifts non-traditional financial content creators. Hi, Harlan. How are you doing today?
I'm excellent. How are you, Michelle?
I'm good. And I'm laughing at myself because this is our third time starting this episode or starting this interview.
We're going to get it right this time.
We're going to get it right. And if you could do me a favor and introduce yourself, that would be fantastic.
Sure. Well, I am Harlan Landes. I am the founder of the Plutus Foundation. I have been part of the financial blogging community since 2003. I love talking and writing about money management and investing and supporting all the people who do love doing these same things through the things that we do at the Plutus Foundation.
So that's the really nice short answer. I want you to share more about how you actually ended up in the personal finance space. Spill the tea.
Yeah, well, it was a really interesting experience for me. After college, and this is going back, I don't know how many years at this point, but let's just say it was before the turn of the millennium. I studied music education. I was planning to be a music teacher, ended up working in nonprofit in the arts. And, all that's fine. It's easier if you have like a financial footing before you go ahead and devote yourself to a nonprofit that probably isn't going to really support you career-wise. But nevertheless, I thought I could do it. I didn't really think about money. I didn't concern myself too much with it. And I ended up in this period of time where I was just pushing my responsibilities off and not earning too much money, spending not a whole lot, but I was just in order to survive with rent and food, car payments and things like that. I was definitely spending more than I was earning. A lot of that had to do with the fact that I was commuting to work quite a big distance every day and racking up some speeding tickets along the way because you're on the road so much. That's bound to happen. Or at least it was for a 22-year-old. So I was able to kind of live that life of pushing financial responsibilities forward, not really doing well on paying off student loans and racking up some credit card debt. But it all came crashing down and I ended up losing my job. I lost my apartment. I lost my car because of those tickets that were unpaid that I mentioned. And I lost my girlfriend at the time, too. So it was kind of a bad situation. Found myself out of an apartment. All my stuff was out on the grass. The
Wait, you
landlord
got evicted?
Well, evicted is kind of an interesting word. It was kind of like
They threw your shit out on the ground. What else would you call it?
I guess that's what it was. I mean, I don't remember if there was a lease or anything, but there was a miscommunication, let's say.
With your checks?
I just came back from, I don't know where I was, probably working for a weekend at this nonprofit. I came back and all my stuff was out on the lawn, and the landlord, who was a roommate, was under the impression I was moving out. I don't know why. And someone else was there moving in. So I was stuck. And thankfully, my father, who had just recently moved in himself with a new relationship that he was a part of at the time, and still is to this day. This is 20 years ago, so it's great. But thankfully, they were able to take me into their basement for a short period of time, and I had to get my stuff together, which I did in some form. But that was the first time I kind of realized that, I needed to change things up. Otherwise, I was not really going to be able to survive on my own, which is something that I certainly wanted to do. So I started reading a lot about money, and just from the perspective of, I need to figure out how to budget. I need to figure out how much I really have and what I'm going to do about it to earn some more money so that I can survive. And I found the Motley Fool discussion boards. This is around 2000 or so. And I found this great community of people who were just talking about living below their means and different techniques for saving and things like that. And I thought it was interesting, and found some software to track my money, and ended up going with like Microsoft Money for a while, and just seeing things and charts really helped me visualize exactly what was going on. And I did decide, after kind of getting things going, new job, still no car, but I was able to get around with mass transit in New Jersey. So no problem there. Saving some money, earning some money. But I was a longtime blogger. I had personal blogs. I had blogs for different projects and things like that. And I thought, you know what? I've been reading about all this money stuff. I'm going to start writing about my experiences and the things that I learned about investing and saving money and generating an income. So I started a financial blog, and that was Consumerism Commentary. And that was back in 2003. And I just found it incredibly interesting. I didn't expect that people would read it. I was just writing as if I was just writing for myself. One of the first the first post was like my net worth report, my balance sheet. Here's where I stand financially. And the intent was to track it. Every so often, I'd post another report, share links along the way, things that I was reading on MSN Money or CNN or whatever the talk is, and sharing my perspective on whatever people were saying. So that was really the birth of financial blogging for me. And turns out that people started reading it and liking it, and participating in discussions, in comments. And before long, I saw that other people were launching financial websites and blogs and things like that as well. And it really became a community. In the years that followed, the recession was huge, because suddenly everyone was looking for information about saving money and what they were going to do when the market crashes. And there were financial blogs, maybe 100 of them at the time in 2007, 2008, maybe a little more. But these sites really became very popular, and people began really getting into the whole idea of personal content, not the stuff from the magazines, not the stuff from the newspapers, not the stuff from the journalists. All that's great, of course. Lots of respect for that. But it turns out that there were a lot of people who were really interested in that personal touch. So blogs like Consumerism Commentary really picked up in popularity. People started feedback loop here. People started their own blogs, even podcasts. And it became a very large niche. And it was around that time where the idea of making money with the blog, too, was kind of foreign. But people started doing things like putting ads on their websites, and it started doing well. And this thing that I started, which was mainly just to track my finances, to do it publicly, maybe get some accountability, maybe have some people follow along the journey. It really turned into a business after not too long. And yeah, that was really the start and how I got into this whole thing. As someone who is interested in music and computers and teaching and just a wide variety of interests, it was never part of my plan to end up where I am, but here I am.
Okay, there are a couple of things, which are, one, I had no idea that happened to you. I've known you for a really long time. I had no idea why you started your site.
When I was blogging, I didn't really talk about myself all that much. I probably had one post over the nearly 10 years more than 10 years I was writing for the site that kind of went over that. But I don't talk about that story very often. Every once in a while, I'll show up on a podcast and someone will ask, so I'll talk about it. I think after one of the Plutus Voices events, someone asked, like, how did you get started? And so I relayed this story and it's the same thing. It's like, wow, I had no idea. So I really do need to, if people want to know, I'm certainly open and I want to talk about it, but I just don't go out there and really talk about it too much, I guess.
I think the other thing that I find really interesting is the tension between doing what you love and the possibility of earning with it. And this is something that I've been thinking about quite a bit in terms of just why I went into the career that I did. I was always encouraged to do what I love versus given encouragement to become a doctor or to pursue a really high earning career. And so before we get deeper into the conversation, I do want to touch on the fact that you went into a career that is not known for earning a lot of money. What were your thoughts around that?
So it's interesting. I think you and I were on the tail end of Gen X. Is it okay if I say that? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't know your parents, so maybe this isn't the case for you specifically, but I think our parents were the children of, Depression era, let's say. And so there was a lot of financial success in the generation that our parents, experienced. And there was, from what I could tell, this idea that while we were growing up, we were basically told that we can do anything we want, we can accomplish anything we want, and, find something you love and pursue that, and things are going to work out. It's kind of the dream that our parents had, right? I mean, they had a lot of financial success and the economy soared in the period of time that they were growing up. There were certainly issues in the 60s, 70s, but I think in general, the idea that those parents had and they wanted to give to their kids was that they could really accomplish anything in this world. My parents encouraged me to just take whatever I was passionate about and make it something that I would spend my time with. And I know that's kind of how I approached life when I was in school too, because I kind of was off in my own world a lot of the time, doing my own things and, still making things work in school and for the most part doing well. But it was important for me to pursue a lot of the interests that I had. I was encouraged to do that. I wasn't discouraged. So I continued doing that, decided to study music education. I thought it was, an important role in life is to communicate the arts to future generations. And, I wanted to be a part of that. A teacher's life, I gave it a little bit of thought, I guess, and what that meant for, the possible future. But I knew that the teachers that I knew had, as I was growing up, had pretty nice houses and things like that. I wasn't too concerned that I was going to be in poverty or anything like that. I knew that I wasn't going to be rich following that career path, but I knew that I can make it work because I've seen people make it work. But I also lived a life where I wasn't paying attention to my money. And, I think finding that balance is something that we have to do. Now, I think the pendulum swung a lot, and we've seen college debt. We've seen this crisis that people are dealing with. And now there's a lot of focus on, what's the return on investment for your college education? Does it make sense to pay what it costs to go to college if you're going to come out and, let's say, be a teacher or, work in a field that isn't as lucrative as something else? Because an engineering degree at the same school, an engineering degree is going to cost the same as a teaching degree. And your income potential is a lot higher with one than it is with the other. So there's a lot of talk now about, well, what does it make sense? And, I still believe that a college education is worth it. And you gain so much from being in the college experience that it's worthwhile. But I mean, some of these numbers are scary now. So I don't know. I think we have to find a balance, and probably it's a privilege to be able to kind of look at your life and say, well, I'm not going to focus on the most lucrative path for myself. And, recognizing that there's some privilege in there is really important.
I do want to say something, which is our experiences were different around this earnings conversation and career. So my parents divorced when I was young, is not unusual for Gen X. And what happened was kind of like what typically happens. So my mom had a really hard time, and my dad was doing very well. And I grew up with my mom. So when my mom was talking to me about what I would pursue in the future, she wanted me to have the experiences and joy she didn't get to have, to be honest. And so that conversation around happiness and joy within a career was a little different and nuanced, because she wanted me to experience something that she really didn't get to have. But that said, because we've got a lot to talk about and I want to keep this tight, you ended up selling your blog. It ended up becoming this amazing thing for you. And I want to talk about having that happen and deciding to create the Plutus Foundation. Like, could you talk about the trajectory between the two? Why didn't you just go somewhere like Bora Bora and just hang out? Why did you do something like create a nonprofit, which is notoriously difficult to do? Why didn't you just take your money and run, is basically my question.
Well, there are so many factors in that. I mean, going back to just the idea that I was making money from basically blogging. I spent 8 hours a day working in an office, and then I spent another 8 hours writing at night, almost every day. And then also volunteering for different things on the weekend. So I was living a pretty busy life, but mostly also for myself. So the idea that the site was earning any money from something that I found so enjoyable and worthwhile, I just didn't trust it, first of all. I thought, well, this could end any day. And then having seen after that kind of like how sites were earning money, they were ranking well on Google, and that was helping them earn money. And then Google would change the algorithm and the site would disappear from search results. I knew it was risky. So I decided at some point that this is great for now. I don't know how long it's going to last. Maybe there's a way for me to optimize what I'm doing a little bit, really focus on optimizing the monetization and all the things that, all the professionals talk about when it comes to making money online. Maybe I could do that for a while and then exit so that someone else can deal with the risk. And I was able to do that, and it worked out, and I'm really happy about the way it worked. So that was really the first step in this. And then it's like, okay, so I'm not going to start something new right now. What can I do instead? And, first of all, prior to all that, I had created the Plutus Awards to give the community a way to recognize each other, pull in more recognition from the outside world, and just to celebrate all the great things that the community puts together in terms of financial content, blog posts, podcasts, all of these things. We wanted to really celebrate all the great stuff that goes on. Thinking about that after I sold the website, combining that with that question that my mother asked me when I was very young, she said, one thing to think about in life is, what would you do if you had $1 million? And that's just the number that people say when they talk about not having to worry about money. At least that's what I thought when I was like a preteen. And I'm like, oh, I would start a foundation, not even understanding what that is, but knowing that I wanted to do something probably in the arts. I wanted to do an arts foundation, right? The idea of launching something that could help some kind of community with some issue was something that I just was really interested in doing. even though, I kind of put that thought to the side when I was pursuing my degree and, my life after my degree, never thinking that that situation would even happen. But then it did. So it's like, okay, I did think about this. And there is this community that I really love, this financial content creation community. So I really wanted to tie all of those things together as much as I could and think about how I could give back. That is when I took this sort of idea from the Plutus Awards and turned that into a mission-focused idea. So what I want to do is give back to this community in return for everything that it has brought to me. I wasn't sure exactly what that meant, but I knew that I wanted to do that. So then I kind of put the word out, put that into the universe, and I found that there were people who are interested in being a part of this and had lots of discussions, lots of ideas going around. And besides the awards, one of the things that we really wanted to get started was giving out grants to people who create financial literacy programs in ways that aren't necessarily done by the rules or by the typical approach. We knew that this community had so many creative minds and would do things differently if given the opportunity. So this isn't for, you don't go to the bank for some financial literacy lessons. You don't go to, it's beyond what you get in school now that they teach financial literacy in school. We want to inspire people to come up with different approaches that's going to not only help with financial literacy, but really support communities that don't have access to financial tools, financial literacy, or just find a way to give families who haven't grown up with good role models, some way to look at what's going on and maybe get some capability and empowerment for themselves.
Maybe these families, it's not even that about role models, it's just about access.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. And there's so many parts to it. And we want to do as much as we can at the foundation to cover all of these bases. What we find is that there are people in this community who are doing so many different things. And the best way for us to deal with that right now, and the best way for us to support it, is for us to step back and say, okay, we're going to give you some resources, some money if you need that, some marketing support, some curricula resources if you need that, whatever it is you need to be more effective and have a bigger impact on the community that you're already reaching in these programs that you've created. We'll step back and give you those resources so that you can do that. So that all these people who are addressing the access issues, or they're addressing teen financial literacy, or they're taking a look at economics and saying, how can we teach economics in a way that's going to be more impactful and people are going to have a better understanding of it? We're saying, all right, you do what you do. We are just happy to support you. Join Julian Sanders, Janice Torres-Rodriguez, Jason Vitug, and more at the Plutus Impact Summit, a virtual event for financial content creators and influencers on July 22nd and 23rd. See all the sessions and register for free at plutusimpact.com.
What has been the one thing that surprised you the most in creating the Plutus Foundation, and what's been the most difficult challenge?
Well, probably the most difficult challenge is for us, we've really struggled with communicating what it is that we're doing. So we're trying a lot of different things now and trying to get the message across in different ways. Because I think that the community knows about us. They know the Plutus Awards, but there's a lot of confusion about what it is that we do, where we came from, and, our relationship to conferences in the space and FinCon and things like that. We want things to be as simple as possible, but we also want people to realize exactly everything that it is that we're doing. And a big struggle, of course, is we don't have a lot of resources in order to do it. We want to be smart with our money. We want to make sure that the programs that we do are paying for themselves. And, we don't expect too much of a contribution from the community. So we are working with different partners that help us do that. And we would love to be able to expand all of that as well so that we could reach out and do more, support more, and have a bigger impact.
If you could sum up what the Plutus Foundation is and who it serves in like 3 sentences, what would that be?
Sure. We exist to serve the community of financial content creators. Now, that includes anyone who's a blogger, a podcaster, someone who does video stuff, TikTok, or maybe they're professional speakers or they host conferences. Anyone who has a message about money that they try to get out to an audience or a community. That is who we support, and we support them with financial resources or other types of resources to help them make an impact. And we do that through the grants, we do that through the awards, we do that through events.
I want to circle back to something that I actually think is important that we talk about, because this is going to be a common thread throughout this season and part of the theme of conversations that I want to have during this first season as host of the podcast, which is the tension around monetization and building a financial brand ethically. Could you talk a little bit about what it was like for you to start monetizing your project and what the tensions were around that? And what do you see other financial content creators struggling with when it comes to that conversation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm so glad that we're putting a lot of resources in building this podcast series about that for this series. And I think that is amazing. And I think it's something that everyone needs to listen to and think about. Back in 20 years ago, the web was still fairly new, and commercial internet was still very new. I was lucky in that my mother worked for a university. And so she had access to the internet at a time before there was AOL, before there was, Prodigy, CompuServe, all these ways that people had to connect to the internet. This is before that. Basically, if you had access to the internet, it meant that you worked at a university or you were perhaps a doctor. There are very few professions that really had access to the internet. And when the internet opened up and companies like AOL started offering access, there was a lot of conflict, because there was this whole idea that the internet was about knowledge and the freedom of knowledge. And then suddenly these companies come on, these .coms, and they have a profit motive, or people pay to access the internet, or suddenly any person could access it rather than just, people in the military or doctors or academics. And so obviously that creates a whole access issue that we have to deal with. And the internet now is open to everyone. Obviously, we've all been on it for so long. So there has definitely been this idea that people come to the internet in this pure form and then money corrupts it, right? Like there used to be no advertising on blogs until there was, and then people had to get comfortable with it over a period of time. And then there became all these other ways for people to make money. There's affiliate programs. There was paying for links. And there's definitely a lot of people who look at the ethical questions about this. When it comes to the content, the question is, well, what is driving your content? Are you producing content because you're getting paid to do it? Are you getting paid to mention certain things? And what form is that payment coming in? And these are all questions that people have to deal with. And I was reluctant for a while to take the next approach for the financial growth of the business. But for me, and a lot of people might not agree, and, they might think that what I was doing was unethical. And I think the way that it worked for me was I was trying to provide a barrier so that if someone wanted to open a credit card and they searched online for credit cards, and this is just an example, hopefully they would find my site first and then read all about the benefits and the drawbacks, and what you need to look for when you sign up for a credit card, what you should be wary of. And then once you have this knowledge, if you choose to sign up for credit cards, you will go on and do so after getting this information. And so my approach was to try to provide a barrier of information that gave people the chance to really make more of an informed decision about the choice that they were making. Because I'm going to say, if someone decides to open a Chase, for example, cashback credit card, they're going to look online to do that. And if I can provide them better information ahead of time, they're probably still going to open it up, but at least they'll have the information. And if they pass through Consumerism Commentary, then the business would benefit financially from them making an informed choice that way. It was important for me to be as honest as possible. And once the companies started saying, well, we need you to say this, avoid saying this, for me, that was, okay, I want to draw the line here. Not interested in giving up that sort of editorial control. I wanted to make sure I was able to tell the truth, be upfront, and make sure people were making an informed decision and not just putting up an ad and disguising it as content. So for me, that was the line that I drew, and people are probably going to draw the line somewhere else. But these are questions that you do have to consider and figure out exactly what's going to be your approach and work within those confines. A lot of people will make money now from creating courses, and I think that's fine for a lot of people, and it helps them kind of avoid one sort of ethical dilemma. But for me, creating courses to provide information, let's say, for example, that is also readily available for free online, for me, that was kind of an ethical dilemma that I was dealing with, and I preferred not to take that approach for that reason. Other people will disagree, and that's fine.
Actually, it's really funny because we're the complete opposite on both issues. So I made a very clear choice to not ever to this day, I won't ever have a credit card rewards program on Michelle is Money Hungry specifically, because I had had so many problems with credit cards. And interestingly, I'm not anti-credit cards, actually, but I just felt like that would not be good on my website. However, I do have a course where I talk about making money with ebooks. And I do think with the course, it's interesting because there's tons of information online. With the course, everything is put into one place where people can go back and refer to that information, in addition to having interviews with authors and things like that. Like there's additional information in the course. But my point being, when I was making these decisions, it was like, how transparent do you need to be around? You could just Google a lot of this stuff. And I literally say to people, you can Google a lot of this stuff. Because that's honest. You can Google a lot of the information that might be in my course, but there's additional information that you're just not going to be able to Google. And I think it's important for people listening to this episode to be 100% comfortable with the decision you ultimately make, because you're going to have to defend it to someone. Because someone's going to ask you a question. So I know of several people in the space who've made quite a bit of money affiliate marketing, for example. And affiliate marketing is really interesting because it's really dependent on your personal experience with the product or service or good, right? And I've seen people go off on content creators who are really excited about the affiliates that they've really promoted. And other people are like, well, we hate this affiliate. We hate this product. So as you're thinking about monetization, you also have to think about the other side, which is opposite the money, which is defending your decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think people can also change their mind over time, and that's fine too. What's right for you at one point in your life or career, or just the life cycle of your publication or whatever it is, might not be right for another time. You might find that you've attracted a different audience than you expected, and that would inform some of these decisions as well. I think it helps that I opened up an account for everything that I wrote about. And so I found myself at the time that I sold the website and stopped doing all of that, with a ton of savings accounts and a ton of credit cards, and all of them, pretty much opened just so that I could write about it from an informed position. So, you have to think about how that affects you personally as well. I've been able to close down all those extra things at this point, but it took a long time to unravel everything and all the automatic connections and things like that. But anyway, yeah, I think we can change our approach over time. And I think it's important to be able to defend yourself and maybe be open to changing your mind and realize that what you were able to defend at one point may not be something you want to defend going forward.
What was the biggest mistake that you've made creating the Plutus Foundation, and what would you do differently?
Oh, I'd probably try to get more people on board faster. The real success of the foundation has been just how we've been able to mix so many different ideas and perspectives together. And I really sat on this for a while and didn't have a lot of help and was just kind of like putting things off. And yeah, we were doing the awards every year, but we could have done more in the first few years. And, I wanted to grow slowly, which is a good way to go. But I also didn't really know exactly what we wanted to do and what would be best for the community until I started really asking those questions and finding people who were really passionate about it. So I think the biggest mistake was probably just not getting started a little sooner and waiting before I had some of those conversations.
You talked about the Plutus Awards, which you created first. Could you talk about why you even created them? And were you surprised by the reactions to the Plutus Awards, both good and bad? Because there have been both.
There have been both. Yeah, certainly. So the whole idea behind the Plutus Awards was, let's create an award ceremony. I had done like silly award ceremonies for various things in the past with other projects, and it was always just kind of like a fun and funny thing. But then I was like, you know what? This is actually something that can help this community, because not only can we gain some more attention from the traditional media, because this is at a time when it started at a time when traditional media would look down on independent content creators, independent publishers. There's no editing process. How do you know what they're saying is true? All of those things. How can we bring more attention to independent content creators in the financial space? How can we show appreciation for those of us who are doing things well or putting out great content consistently? And also subtly, how can we kind of inform the conversation a little bit, which might not have been so important back in, the first days of the Plutus Awards. But I think it's important that someone kind of sets a direction for the quality of content that should be out there. So that's why this whole thing started. And it did start completely online. The first year we did it, we just kind of did it all on Twitter, basically. And it worked out okay. It was fine. And people who received the tweet and got a notification that they were selected, they were happy. And very few people knew about it. And then following year was the first year of FinCon. And I was intending on doing the awards again, and we're going to continue this and do it social media focused and just kind of have this virtual thing going on. And but we were asked to, if we were interested in bringing it to FinCon, having an awards ceremony, and just doing it there. I said, sure, that sounds like a lot of fun. I had been interested in like being part of a conference for this community. So PT from PT Money created one, and I was happy to be on board. So we did this award ceremony, and it was in a tent, and it was impossible to hear anything that was going on.
Schaumburg, Illinois.
Schaumburg, Illinois. And it was a whole lot of fun, and people liked it. And I think J Money walked away with like 7 trophies or something like that.
I feel like you're right.
Yeah. So now it was a real in-person thing. And I realized, you know what? Okay, maybe we need to figure out exactly how things are going to work, because people are looking at this and it's been fun. Okay. But now, do we really want to have someone winning 7 awards in one night? Do we really want this to happen? Do we really want that to happen? And then how do we choose the winners? And all of that became it became a real thing. And I wanted to do it in a way that people would think, well, this is legitimate. This isn't just some guy fooling around and naming his friends. I wanted it to be legit. So we created a committee and we got people who were interested in participating as people who would represent the community and vote and select the finalists and winners based on submissions, based on things that they knew, based on, as much as we can gather from the community. And it took a while, I think, before we really started getting it right. And I think there are certainly people out there who think that we still haven't gotten it right. And that's okay. We're getting better every year. But it really brought to my attention the need for good representation across all types of diverse categories of people to make sure that we're really the awards are really reflecting the vast diversity of this community. So that became a really strong push within the foundation and the awards team to make sure that we're doing the absolute best that we can to present all of the excellent content, good representation of all the excellent content, and then being able to stand behind everything that we say. So that became really important, and it has vastly improved over the years, and we continue to do that. We use a panel of 60 or so representative bloggers and podcasters, members of the financial media, and we come up with the categories every year, paying attention to what the latest trends are, making sure we're capturing as many people as we can. And then they spend a lot of time defending choices and nominating people and reviewing all of the nominations that we get from the public, all of the entries that we receive from the content creators, and coming up to a very defendable list of finalists and winners.
I wasn't going to ask this question, but I think it makes sense to do so. How do people get on the panel? When would we even know to do this? How would we know?
Sure. Every year we put out a call. You can find it by following the Plutus Awards on social media. We put it out there every year, send it out to the newsletter. We work with other groups of financial content creators. We do little presentations on social media groups and things like that to talk about the awards. We try to get the word out as much as we can so that everyone knows it's time. And word of mouth helps a lot too. We know that a lot of people have come to the panel because someone told them that it's important to do so, to make sure that their community or their niche is represented. And we just have an application to fill out. As long as someone's active in the community, basically they're brought in as part of the panel. There is some work that goes into it. It's not a lot. We try to make it as simple as possible for everyone. We don't want people to think it's a huge time commitment, but we do expect you to be able to participate in discussions and make some good choices and just be defendable.
You create the awards, you have the foundation, then you added a third thing, the Plutus Voices events, of which I love these events, but I think that there's an inherent challenge creating another in-person thing. So could you talk about why you decided to create the Plutus Voices events, what they are, and how has COVID impacted that initiative?
Sure. Well, we created the Plutus Voices prior to COVID, and we created it because we were getting a lot of interest in us putting together a live event for financial content creators where they could get better at doing what they're doing. And we decided to kind of focus that on making an impact on their audience. And the feedback that we've gotten from the Plutus Voices events has been really, really just more positive than I could ever imagine. Certainly people have suggestions and, there's always room for improvement in doing what we're doing. But I was just surprised in how thankful people were that we were presenting this kind of information. And what we do is we kind of focus it a little differently. It is on making an impact. And what we do is we have speakers at each of these events, and they're very small events. And the speakers speak on a topic that pertains to making an impact on a community that may not necessarily be the most already covered when it comes to the financial content that you see out there. So underserved communities of various types. We create a special event that's a little different than what you've seen at other conferences and things like that. It is meant to be small because we take these topics and we expect everyone to participate and do a little brainstorming and come up with some creative answers to some questions that we pose. And the questions we pose could be things like if the topic is, let's say, communicating with people who are in poverty about money, the questions we might ask might pertain to, like, how do you effectively provide financial advice that gets around such and such an obstacle? And then we expect everyone who attends the event to break into groups and then discuss it. And really, at the end of the event, people come away with ideas for communicating financial their concepts in a way that will actually be more effective and really opens their minds to things they might not have considered before. And that's the one comment we hear the most is that, thanks for bringing this topic to our attention. I really didn't think about this way before, and it's going to change the way that I communicate about, saving money or earning money, whatever it happened to be.
And actually, as you were speaking, I wanted to clarify and just make it very clear that the Plutus Foundation is specifically focused on amplifying the voices of folks in the personal finance content creation space. So it's not so much that you are working with the folks that receive the information, so much that you are working with folks who are creating financial content and sending it out into the world. And I think that's a really important thing to clarify, so there's no confusion. We're trying to help people communicate financial content, concepts, resources, find resources, that type of thing. So I just want to make it super, super clear. And obviously, COVID's impacted this part of the Plutus Foundation's work. What is it looking like as we move out of or move into 2022 and 2023? I'm so tired as I say this.
Yeah, we're being super careful. I mean, we shut everything down with COVID. In-person events just weren't happening, and we want everyone to be safe. So right now, I mean, we do have some events scheduled for this year, but we're being very careful about it. We're not even really marketing it all that much right now. We just want to be sure that once we get things going, it's going to be in a way that's absolutely safe. These have been small events anyway, and we want them to continue being small events, but we want, we've even had one was partially outdoors that we did. That was the one in Irvine, California, the first year that we did it. It was nice to have kind of an indoor-outdoor space. So, I mean, there are options, but we're really focused on just only having these events in person when the world is ready for those events to come back. In the meantime, we did a lot, especially in 2020, we did a lot of virtual events, a lot of webinars and things like that. And part of what we do with the Plutus Foundation too, especially in Plutus Voices, is giving members of the community opportunities to speak and opportunities to present when they might not have received those opportunities in larger forums. So we were able to continue doing a lot of that throughout the pandemic. But as we kind of saw throughout the year, I think everyone's kind of experienced this to an extent, it's hard to just keep going with those virtual events. People get tired of that. So we're focusing on some new content projects right now in the meantime, which is going to be a lot of fun for this entire year. And of course, the podcast has been so great during the pandemic. And that's something that we're doing as well and continuing thanks to you.
And thanks to Sarah, our friend Sarah. So I do want to give her a shout out. Sarah Lee Kane. Whoop, whoop.
Absolutely. She was fantastic. And, we're so happy that she was able to do it for the seasons that she did. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we're slowly getting back into the in-person events and we're just being super careful.
We're starting to wrap things up. I have a few more questions. You've been exposed to so many financial conversations throughout the years. What's the conversation that's been the most uncomfortable, but has led to your own personal growth in terms of sharing and supporting financial content?
I was originally going to say the most uncomfortable conversation was when I lost my job back in, the beginning of the millennium. And I had to sit down with my dad and look at the reality of where my finances were. And that's kind of when I really got on this path. I think we've had a lot of challenges. We've certainly gotten a lot of criticism for the Plutus Awards over the years. So has the Academy Awards. So it's not like you have an award ceremony, you're going to get some criticism because people are going to win who other people don't like, or people think other people should win, and all that happens. But it's been my goal to always kind of push things forward and be as progressive as we can and include as many people. But that has led to a lot of uncomfortable conversations. And, certainly, when we were heading into COVID, there were a lot of discussions about, all right, is the financial content community really doing what it needs to be doing from an inclusion perspective? Are people getting the same opportunities regardless of race and gender and sexual preference and everything? And all of that is super important to me. And we want to make sure we're doing all the right things that we can. And that has led to a lot of uncomfortable conversations and some decisions that haven't made everyone happy. And I think that's been a challenge for us, but we're going to push on doing what we're doing. We have values as part of the organization, and we're going to continue to live by them as best that we can.
As we move further into 2022, what are some of the challenges or opportunities that you see for personal finance content creators right now?
I think there are so many opportunities right now. We're recording this the day after the Dow was down by 1,000 points midday, and everyone was talking about, oh, this is why. This is because, inflation is here. It's to stay. We're heading for heartbreak. This is a terrible market, terrible times. And then it recovered by the end of the day, and everyone was talking about, oh, well, it's because of this. It's, there's so many experts out there. And I think there's a real opportunity for people to add more of a real conversation around what happens in the world financially and what happens to us individually financially. There are lots of opinions out there. There are lots of different experiences. And I think there's a huge opportunity for people to share experiences that don't get the mainstream attention. And independent content creation is the way to do that, whether it's a podcast or a TikTok or a blog. Blogs are still relevant. And I think it's a huge opportunity for people who have something to share to get on board and share their unique perspective. And I think there's an opportunity on the business side as well. I think there are always going to be opportunities for people to earn money, whether it's creating products that are unique and interesting and speak to a certain audience. There are always going to be opportunities to work with companies that have the funding that want to support what we're doing. I think there are opportunities to niche down, and there are opportunities to build brands, and it's a big world out there.
If I were to ask you about the changes in the personal finance content creation space since you started in 2000, which ones stand out to you the most? I don't mean to laugh, but it's been a minute since you've been in this space.
Yeah, I'm old. I get it.
No, you're not old, man. You're not. But if you could share, maybe in the last 3 years specifically, let's narrow it down. What are some of the things that you've noticed that are huge opportunities that people should consider?
Oh, man. I mean, it's been fun just to see the different kind of waves of trends that have come through, that have come and gone. It's been super fascinating. I mean, when I started, it was all about just saving money. That's what people talked about. And then the recession hit, and everyone was looking for budget and frugality content and saving money. And that kind of led right into like the FIRE movement, because that I mean, the idea of fire has been around forever. We know that. But like the whole concept of how you talk about it, that really changed in the years after the recession. People were taking that whole, saving money thing into extremes. And that was one path to fire. Financial independence, I think, is a concept that is never going away. I've just been so excited in the past 5 years to see how people are talking about it differently now. Certainly a much bigger focus on the income generation side of the equation. And then, of course, the diversity and inclusion over the past 3 years. I think there's been a real big focus on that. And that is the part that is so inspiring and so important. And I think that's going to continue for a long time. And we're going to see that grow and morph into something. I don't know what, but it's just exciting to see.
Are we going to see you on TikTok?
See, like, I think for me, it's time to I can't get it. I
can't stop laughing. I'm addicted to food talk, actually. I don't know why, because technically I might have gotten fluffy during COVID. Yes, people, I have been emotionally eating, and food talk is addicting, but I feel like there might be an opportunity there.
I've been avoiding it. I don't know. I feel like I'm part of the generation that doesn't do well in TikTok.
No.
I don't know. I haven't cracked the code yet.
Gen X, there's some Gen Xers killing it on TikTok. I'm just going to say.
I downloaded the app and I can't figure it out. I don't know. I can figure anything out technically. I've learned how to program in different languages and,
I think you're just making it too hard. You're just making it too hard.
Maybe. It's probably a lot simpler than I think it is, but
it's much.
Miranda's doing a great job. It's fun to watch our friend Miranda Marquit do her own TikToks and everything. And of course,
those are pretty good.
Tori's, she's a legend now.
Killing it.
Yeah. And there's so much good TikTok happening right now in the financial space. Of course, there's room for more, but is there room for me to try to do that? I don't know.
You know what? It's funny that you asked it in that way. That might be the question that everyone asks about what content and projects they focus on. Is there room for me to do the thing? And is it something that lights you up? So TikTok is not lighting you up just by the way you talk about it. You talk about blogging. And actually, I did not plan to ask you this, but I feel like we're good on time. Is blogging dead?
No, I don't think blogging's dead. I think you've got to meet people where there are. People are still reading blogs. It still happens. But I think people just expect a lot more these days from someone that they want to follow on a consistent basis. So niche down, and blogging is still hot. I don't think that the period for blogging is over. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff happening online. So there's more than just blogging. But I think there's certainly a space if you just want to start a new blog, go right ahead. And if you have a great voice and if you are consistent, then there's a way to be successful in whatever measurement you find success.
This is our last question, which is, what is the one piece of advice that you would give anyone looking to go into the personal finance space right now? Or maybe they are in the space right now and they're feeling like maybe they shouldn't be. What's the one piece of advice you'd give?
Yeah, I think you have to find your people. There are communities out there. You need to talk to more people who are doing the same things or similar things that you're doing, because there is a whole lot of support that you can get, whether it's from the Plutus community or from women in personal finance or from any number of these groups that come up. And being part of a community is really the key to this. It's, you can put your content out there and wait for people to see it, or you can start collaborating with people and start being a part of this community and have a much more pleasant time and receive all of the good feedback that you need in order to keep going. I think that is the crucial piece to being successful right now, finding your people and not being afraid to lean on them and to give support in return. And that's how to do it.
I appreciate so much your time today. There are a ton of groups out there that you can be a part of, listeners. I think community is so important to growing your brands, attracting money, helping with tech. anything you could think of in terms of building a financial brand, you must find a community. I do want to mention Sandy Smith's Elevate Influencer community as well for people of color, incredible group of folks. There's just so much that we could talk about, but we'll talk all day. So Harlan, if people would like to follow the Plutus Foundation and just the different work that you're doing, how can we find you in addition to subscribing and liking this podcast?
Definitely do that. Also, follow at Plutus Awards on Twitter and Instagram, and join the Plutus community on Facebook. Those are the projects that you can follow me on. And certainly I'm at Harlan Landes on Twitter, but I'm reachable in many ways online. I just don't do a lot of personal social media these days.
But you're living the dream.
I guess so.
Thank you, Harlan.